In any program, a range of exceptions may occur. So it's very important how you are handling those exceptions. When you are writing a web service and there is some exception at the server side, you will like your web service to send a response to the client. For example, suppose the database is down. Even then, you will like your service to send a response and inform the client that there is some internal error at the server side. In our previous chapter, we have done something similar to this. In our previous chapter, we learned how to create the response and send back the response. While creating the response, you can always set an error code in the response and send it back. So this is one way of handling the exception when you are creating REST web services. Other way is that instead of creating response, you can just throw the exception. Now when you throw the exception, still you will want a response to be sent to the client. So how do you do that? This can be done only if your JAX RS runtime is catching the exception that you are throwing and processing it. Because when JAX RS runtime catches the exception, it creates a response object and send it back to the client. To ensure that JAX RS runtime catches your exception, there are two ways to do that. The first way is to throw the instance of javax.rs.core.web application exception. When you throw the instance of this class, then JAX RS will catch this exception. It will create the response object and send that response object to the client. While creating the instance of this class, you can always set the status code. Another option is to throw the exception which is registered in exception mapper class. We will see how to do this in upcoming lectures. Third and least preferred option is you just throw the exception. When you just throw the exception which is not the instance of web application exception and which is not registered in exception mapper class, then JAX RS runtime will not catch that exception. And the servlet container will catch that exception and process that exception in its own way. In that scenario, server may not send the proper response to the client. So that's why this is the least preferred way. First option, we already know how to do that. Second option, we will learn in upcoming lectures. And third option is not even an option because you are relying on servlet container to handle the response instead of JAX RS runtime.